Now here's an interesting book. It's called The Art of War. And it's all about a general called Sun Tzu. Now the book was first translated into the French language in 1772. Interesting date. Just before the banning of the Jesuits. And it was written by a French Jesuit by the name of Jean-Joseph Marie Amiot, and he was the astronomer to the Emperor of China. And a partial translation into English was attempted in 1905. So here was a book, and it was translated into French, and it told the story of this general of the Chinese army more than 800 years ago. Apparently a translation of a legendary general who probably is fictitious and never existed, but nevertheless he's spoken about in many circles, and this book is actually compulsory reading for military generals and in the military schools even of the United States of America. So it must be very important if it's compulsory reading. So we have to understand. Now the story is about the general whose name is Sun Tzu, and he was the general of the army of King Helu, who is also known as King Hu, and the country was Wu. And it's interesting that this man, of course, spoke fluent Chinese, because he was the astronomer of the Emperor of China. Now if you go to Japan, there's a massive statue of the general Sun Tzu that you can find there, so he's a prominent legendary figure. Now on page 490 of his book, The Jesuits, Malachi Martin implies that if a Jesuit writes a book, it is in essence the general of the Jesuits himself who sanctions it in view of the oath of obedience. A Jesuit will only put a book out that represents the view of the general. But a Jesuit can also put a book out that is not only the view of the general, but the writings of the general himself. Are you with me? So this fictitious character may have never existed, Sun Tzu. And it must be an allegory that tells us something. Now the most brilliant strategist will tell you what his strategy is. They do this in chess, and then proceed to defeat you using the very strategy that he's made known in the first place. Then you prove your brilliance beyond a shadow of doubt. Now, the story goes that the king of Wu was in serious trouble because his enemies had surrounded him and was taking one piece of territory after the other away from him. And he had such a problem in his nation that eventually he summoned this great general, or the general came to him and said, I can solve your problem. I can solve your problem for you. And he said, my problem is too great. My problem cannot be solved. The general said, yes, I can solve your problem for you. So let's call him King Hu. King Hu said, how would you solve it? And he said, by raising an army that's invincible, that is so organized, that is so precise, that is so obedient unto death, that it will do anything I command. He said, how are you going to do that in my ragtag nation? He says, I will do it. Give me the opportunity.